as they are lowering her casket into the earth, a violent storm begins.
Oh my God.
A Category 4 hurricane with 125 mile per hour winds, 13 feet of rain. A storm that...
13 feet of rain? Hello and welcome to another episode of Goddess Hangs.
Episode 66.
Woo! I'm Sadie.
And I'm Juliet. Obviously.
And we created the Goddess Hangs podcast to make the world of mindset, manifestation, and magic more relatable
and fun.
Nailed the intro this week.
We made it.
We made it.
66.
66. So we're doing a really fun episode in honor of Women's History Month. If you recall, when I went to New Orleans, I took a Bad Bitches of New Orleans tour, so we were inspired, and we're going to do a Bad Bitches of Witchcraft history episode today.
We were researching. We did something we don't normally do.
Yeah, usually we fly by the seat of our pants. We never plan at all.
We prepared.
Usually Juliet gets here while I'm still doing my makeup, and I'm like, so what should we talk about today? And then we sort of go back and forth a little bit, and then we do it.
And voila, a podcast is born.
But before we get to the Bad Bitches of Witchcraft, what's new with you, Juliet?
Honestly, nothing wild. Just, I think we both had little mini baby thoughts and big mini baby feelings and thoughts over the weekend. I was getting in my head like, am I interesting? Do people even find me interested? I'm the most boring person I know. But I was going down that little rabbit hole. But other than that, I went and saw the movie Cyrano.
Oh.
It was okay.
Okay. I like that story and I love that actor, but I haven't seen the movie.
He was fantastic. I think I just expected to feel what I felt in like The Greatest Showman with the songs and the story, and it just didn't quite do it for me, and I wanted it to so bad.
It's hard to live up to The Greatest Showman.
But yeah, I went and saw a movie. I think that's the first time I've gone to a movie in like 4 years.
I haven't been to the movies since the pandemic. Craig and I used to go all the time. There's this one downtown that has like, maybe I've talked about it before, or maybe not. There's this one downtown. Now we live kind of far from it, but it has like reclining huge seats, a table in front of you, and you have a waiter or waitress.
Oh,
the whole
is it
time.
iPick?
No, it's called the Alamo Draft House.
Oh.
And what's really fun is it's not just new movies. They do some new releases, but a lot of times it's like cult classics, old films. They'll do all sorts of stuff, as well as like the biggest new ones. And so you have a waiter, you can get wine, beer, food. They have like fancy popcorn, with like fancy, they've got like Parmesan truffle popcorn, different things. So we used to do that for date night, like whenever we could, because that was when Craig had shows every night and we like barely ever got to. I also saw Matthew Gray Gubler there once, which was a big deal for me.
That's exciting for you.
I stood next to him because they have like a merchandise area that you can look at stuff. And I stood next to him for a few minutes and just sort of side-eye looked at him. And then Craig was like, babe, what are you doing? Let's go. And I was like, oh, babe, can you see I'm trying to work the room here? And then I left. But it was awesome because I've been madly in love with him for a very long time. He's a weird guy.
Oh my gosh. What was it called again? The
Alamo Draft House.
Okay.
They have them in different areas. Maybe we could meet there for a double date night sometime.
That would be very fun.
Boo is like digging for truffles. Speaking of truffles.
On Sunday night, me and Victor and two of our friends did a little sunset drive down PCH. That was really magical. And anytime I drive near the ocean, I want to listen to Olivia Rodrigo and pretend I'm 17 again. So we did that. Otherwise, just very mellow. I mean, just more of getting things in order. That is a bite. No.
Booze on Juliet's lap if you're not watching. She was listening
like,
to the audio and you're like, that is a bite?
Lick, lick, nibble.
She's testing the waters.
She is. We got some of our businessy stuff in place. So that's been exciting. We've been working with Quantum Goddess Girls. And yeah, that's sort of honestly all that's new with me. I kind of laid low this past week and like
I did too.
Got things sorted for us.
Yeah.
What about you?
I had about a week where I was feeling super anxious. And that's fine because I used to feel super anxious all of the time. So a week now and then, okay. And I sort of pinpointed what it was making me anxious and talked to Juliet about it. And Craig was an angel and helping talk me through it. And it wasn't something that was true or a big deal. It was something that's going to be totally fine. But I was just having like this, sort of dark night of the soul ego meltdown of like, oh my God, like we're doing this stuff and I can't, like I'm gonna ruin it. And that's totally not true.
No.
But it was okay. I had the weekend to myself and I was both very productive and had a lot of time to rest. Like I did a really good job over the weekend. I did a lot of work. I like to work on the weekends when Craig's gone so we can hang out when he's home. And then like at night, I just like binged Jane the Virgin for a few hours every night of the weekend and ate like too many snacks and it was really nice. So that's what's new with me. Exciting stuff this week.
I know. Speaking of, okay, I forgot one major thing we did this past week. We watched Inventing Anna on Netflix.
Oh, I haven't watched it.
Okay.
But I've seen a lot of, I saw the SNL skit, so I kind of get.
I need to watch that. I haven't seen that, but I'm sure it's great. So if you don't know who this is, I'll be brief. This woman in her mid-20s, early 20s moved.
I think we talked about this last week.
Oh, okay.
But did you finish it now?
Yes. Moved to New York and just sort of took on the persona that she was a German heiress and had a big trust fund and all these things.
Where did she move from?
She was born in Russia. She grew up in Germany.
Okay, so she was at least like from Germany. She wasn't from like Wisconsin and moved to New York and was like, I'm a German heiress.
That was almost what I thought it was going to be. But no, she did come from Germany.
Wisconsin is very German.
Lived in Paris for a little bit and then came here. And somehow this woman, and maybe I'm repeating myself from last week, but she climbed up to the top of the top of the top of the socialite crowd,
right,
with all the most wealthy and influential and powerful people. And then, of course, the scam and the lies caught up to her and it came crashing down and whatever. But and maybe this was not the takeaway I was supposed to get from this show.
Divine delusion will get you anywhere.
Because I absolutely do not support
scam,
theft, fraud, or anything. But she became it. Mm-hmm. She convinced herself and everyone around her. And I was like, I looked over at Victor. I said, I know I'm not supposed to be inspired by this, but I'm a little bit inspired by the drive that this woman has. Are you going to puke on me? Please don't. And so, the first half of it, the first 4 or 5 episodes, you are sort of just transfixed by like what she gets away with. Mm-hmm. And then, justice is sort of served, and I don't again, I'm not a proponent for fraud, but I was kind of amazed by her, and I get why it's such a story.
If you're not scamming people, you can be inspired by the way she owned, but she should have used the way she was able to own that to create that for herself actually, instead of scamming her way into those
correct
acts. So misuse of divine delusion.
This is an improper, unethical
prime example.
But if you want to get lost in a very interesting 9-episode thing, I highly recommend it. Highly, highly. Even Victor was all about it. We're like, oh, we gotta watch the next one. So that was an adventure. We felt like we were in New York living the high life. For a while.
When was that? Like, what was that recently? Was that a long time ago?
Well, she, I think it was like 2018 17 or 18 or 19 because she was sentenced to 4 to 12 years in prison and she got out in under 4. So she got out of prison last year. And now there's, I think, going to be a little show following her life and all these things.
Yeah, I heard there was going to be a documentary with actually her in it.
Yeah, so it's just, I mean, she got what she wanted. She wanted to be famous. She wanted people to know her.
Now she's going to make her money that she always pretended she had.
I know. So yeah, don't con your way to the top, but the divine delusion within reason is quite inspiring.
Love that.
Yeah, and that's all that's new. Can we just do a shout out to these beautiful shoes you're wearing? I'm sorry.
Shout out to Sparkle Fairy. I had to have them. I was just lusting after them for months and months.
They're gorgeous.
And I finally pulled the trigger and I'm very happy. And you know what? All of the shoes I have, which is 2, all of them, they're so comfortable.
I might have to try these on and see how comfortable they are.
I think they're probably the same shape as the ones you have that are like shorter and shimmery.
That heel looks a little bigger though, like chunkier.
Maybe. Oh yeah.
I'll give it a test run.
Everything extremely comfortable and I'm obsessed with them and they're a little flashy, so I haven't worn them much yet, but I am going to Coachella next month, so maybe they'll make an appearance there. I'm afraid I'm going to ruin them, but also, you know what? Live life on the edge. I'm not really going to be like pushing my way through crowds of people to get to the front. I'm not really that person anymore. So
if anybody's going to Coachella, you might see the one and only Sadie Olsen.
Please come up to me and
all of a sudden Coachella ticket sales go through the roof.
I sold out Coachella.
Yes.
I'm just going there, guys. Maybe someday we'll be an act.
That would be fun. Just chatting.
Yeah, we'll be singing and I'll be in the background like one of those like car lot dancing ribbon things.
Ooh, we'll dress you just like one.
Yeah, and I'll be there. And
but we'll add rhinestones, pink rhinestones.
Yeah, and I'll be wearing my boots. And you'll be singing.
I'm there.
That's my vision.
I love it. Add it to the list.
Coachella 2023. We're ready.
Yay! So I had a lot of fun doing research.
Me too.
It reminded me of being in school, which I really loved doing research in school. So it was a fun little flashback for me. And I am excited. I'm going to let you start because you came up with this beautiful idea.
Okay.
And I want to listen to a story.
Let's see. Should I save? I have one that I think is like the most interesting. Should I start with that or save it for last?
I think you should start with it because I have an interesting one and I'll end with that one.
Okay. Okay. So the one that I'm going to start with is Catherine, and I'm probably going to butcher all of the French in this, but Catherine Monvoisin, maybe? It looks like Monvoisin. Catherine lived in Paris. She was alive 1640 to 1680. So let me bring you to 1600s Paris. There was sex. There was scandal.
Oh.
King Louis XIV was ruling, okay? Catherine, her taglines are fortune teller, sorceress, and poisoner.
Oh.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay, so Catherine was born into a lower class family. She was taught the art of fortune telling at age 9, and the art of fortune telling meaning that she was good at picking up on cues of people to keep talking. So if she said something, the way they reacted, she would know if she was going in the right direction. So she wasn't necessarily psychic. Maybe she was, but there was a big emphasis on this was like the art of fortune telling. She was skilled at reading clients' face and hands. And then she started noticing that people came to her with similar problems, similar situations. You know, they wanted to know about love. They wanted to fix infidelity. They wanted to have someone in their life die, or they wanted to give birth. They wanted to acquire fortunes. So she began to sell potions for these things. So her husband was a jeweler and his business like failed. So it fell on her, and she really stepped fully into this as a full-time business, as like a fortune teller and a sorceress potion creator. And her business really began to thrive. So she was from a poor class, but she became known for her magical workings, especially her aphrodisiacs, meaning her love potions and her ability to fix love in people's lives. So she started to kind of work her way up the classes because more and more people were hearing about this. And this is how she eventually came to be in some of the highest courts in Paris. Another reason she worked her way up into higher classes is that she would discreetly help women with abortions, and she also would help unwed mothers like give birth to their children and very quietly like adopt the children away. So she also did work with women in that way.
What a woman.
So it's interesting because like that to me says, oh, what an incredible, powerful, helpful woman. But then there's this dark side of her too.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, she's a poisoner, right? So there are stories told about black masses that she would hold. So keep in mind that these stories are more or less hearsay, right? There's not like physical evidence of these things happening. Things get exaggerated throughout history, but stories go that a woman would perform as the altar during these black masses. Okay, so a woman was the altar. A bowl would be placed on her chest and a baby held above it. And I'm not going to be graphic, but blood would drip down from the baby. Okay?
Oh, no.
Scary. But one anecdote that I read said that her daughter would catch Catherine collecting the blood of pigeons. So it was more than likely this was theatrics and the babies were never actually harmed.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yes. But we don't know that for sure. So yeah, as I said, so probably no babies were harmed because she was often caught slitting the throats of pigeons. Sorry for the pigeons, but if I had to trade that for a baby. So these black masses were like a popular theatrics. They were held in this like, as she built her business up, she had this room. I didn't write down the name because I couldn't pronounce it anyways. And she made it decorated very luxuriously. She wore this like robe with gold embroidery on it. And she would hold these black masses that like wealthy people would come to. Okay, so how did Catherine Monvoisin become known as the poisoner? Okay, so most often, Catherine was providing poisonous concoctions to women trying to get rid of their abusive and or unfaithful husbands. So again, I'm like, you know what? This was the 1600s in Paris. It was a little bit more lawless than nowadays. If they were abusive, I'm not condoning it, but Catherine's kind of a badass.
Right. I mean, it's not like these women could probably call the police.
Right. They were...
have any sort of support.
But I also didn't get the feel that Catherine was like super picky about who she was poisoning. So we'll see. So because she would do this, so she was giving aphrodisiacs to win your husbands, and then when your husband started abusing you, she'd give you the poison to kill him. Well-rounded service. But she soon became wrapped up in the politics of the nobles because a woman would come and be like, well, I want my husband to die so I can marry the more powerful guy now. So she was stuck in these like rings of politics, handing out potions left and right to help women sort of gain power.
Imagine being this woman's intern.
Well, she did have an assistant.
I knew it was coming.
He was a magician, and they were also lovers. So, I actually have that next. So I said you can imagine poisoning for political and powerful gain. So other fun, interesting notes. Catherine was married, but she also had 6 lovers. Catherine was busy. They were probably like spaced out, but notably was her assistant.
I don't think so. I think it was all at the same time.
I'm like, Catherine, that is a lot.
This is a woman in her power.
She was interested in science and alchemy. I mean, if you poison people for a living, you probably are. And she studied at Paris University. And she also would engage in, quote, severe conflicts. Don't know what that means. Couldn't find more information. But she would engage in severe conflicts from her rival poisoner, Marie Boss. So poisoner was a legitimate job that was like a ring in Paris. Like, it was so common to solve your problems by poisoning someone that, like, Catherine was doing this as a full-time job, and she had a rival poisoner, and there was a whole underground ring of poisoners. Like, this was just a thing. And I don't know if other cities were like this. I don't think this is a thing anymore because our science is too good to catch up, to pick up poisons if someone's dying. But at this time, it was easy to sort of slowly poison somebody, and you would never know the difference. They looked like they got sick slowly and died. So I wrote, poison was big biz in 1600s Paris.
Big biz.
So
Get
interesting.
Some stock in poison.
Okay, so this is what Catherine is most famous for. Her most famous client, Madame de Montespan, who was this is French, have no idea, the maître en titre, I don't know, of King Louis XIV. She was a mistress of King Louis XIV. So Montespan hired Catherine to win the favor of King Louis and would employ Catherine throughout her relationship to like keep the passion alive, keep him hooked. So she would employ her throughout the relationship, holding several of the aforementioned black masses. So she would have whole black mass ceremonies for the purpose of keeping her and King Louis's relationship alive. And it's said that Madame de Montespan herself acted as the human altar on one or more occasions, which is a big deal because she was very, very high in like the noble court. And I didn't mention this, but it's said that the women were naked as the human altar. So yeah. So she consistently used Catherine's aphrodisiacs on King Louis without him knowing. So she was kind of always dosing him with
I wonder what was in those.
It didn't say, it just said aphrodisiacs. I'm super curious too. So all of that, it's like, all right, you know, I don't believe in using love potions to pick somebody and make them fall in love with you. We're all about attracting what's for our highest good, but okay. That's not great, but okay. Well, now hold on. When Montespan and Louis's relationship began to deteriorate and he was moving on to another lover, so I think he had several mistresses, but Montespan was kind of like his favorite, like his, you know, whatever after your wife. Your wife's your very favorite, and then there's like the favorite mistress.
The main side chick.
And then there was a few more. So she was sort of feeling like she was being replaced, that King Louis was going to get rid of her. So Montespan asked Catherine to have both the king and his new lover killed. And Catherine was hesitant because, of course, killing the king, you know, that's a big deal. That's going to be tough to get in there. But eventually she did agree, and her first attempt at poisoning failed, which was she had a scroll that she was trying to get to King Louis, and the scroll was poisonous. So apparently just opening it and either breathing in something or by touching it. But something got messed up and he never got the scroll. And before a second attempt could take place, so she tried once, failed. Before the second attempt could take place, the Parisian police had uncovered this whole underground ring of poisoners that I mentioned. Catherine, of course, being involved in that. And I laughed. So I got most of this information from the website partylike1660.com, which is about King Louis's reign mostly. And this is one of the things on there. And they said they had uncovered the underground circle of magicians and poisoners. Interesting. So this whole story was just filled with so much sex and scandal. I'm sure there are documentaries or shows about this woman. I can't imagine there's not. I haven't looked it up, but I would watch the movie or the show about Catherine de Monvoisin, who's also known as Laveau, which I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but means the neighbor. So she was kind of like, her street name was like the neighbor, you know, the neighbor that's always there for you to help.
Cool.
You know? So to wrap up this story, Catherine was convicted of witchcraft. It was a series of nobles sort of the underground ring getting discovered, nobles getting sort of named, them being like, I'll give you people so I don't get named and I don't get in trouble. So she was sort of ratted out. And she was convicted of witchcraft. So that was her conviction, and she was burned in public in Paris in 1680. And that is Catherine de Monvoisin. So I wanted to pick one quote unquote villain, and Catherine was my villain.
I love that she was both, though. Like,
yeah,
she did amazing things and
things.
Awful things.
Yeah, she was an interesting character. She was the one I had the most fun researching. So yeah.
So how old was she when she died?
It's hard for them to have exact. I think she was born in 1640, so 1680 she was exactly 40 years old.
Yeah, that's a long time for back in the day.
Back then, yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
Okay. Ooh, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will be telling you the story of Old Mother Shipton. Have you ever heard about Old Mother Shipton? I had not.
I had not until I was like doing this research and came across the name and read like a 1-paragraph blurb, but I don't know much at all.
Okay.
I'm excited.
So her real name is Ursula Southiel. She was born in England in 1488, and this is when Henry VIII was king. She was born in a cave. That alone. Oh, hi, Boo. She was born in a cave, and her mother was only 15. So her mother, and the mother wouldn't say who the father was. So everybody assumed that her father was the devil.
Oh.
Which is a really big assumption to
Big
jump
leap.
to. Like, oh, we don't know your dad. Well, he must be the devil. And the mother raised this baby in these caves for years because she was like so ostracized from society. And then eventually the mom went to a monastery because she was, this was when baby Ursula was like 7.
Okay.
And the baby was placed in some type of home because the mother knew, like, I can't take care of this child. And they never saw each other again, which come on up, boo girl. Which was really sad. Do you want to hear about Old Mother Shipton?
Get up there. You need to stop meowing.
We're in the middle of a very important story. Oh, and her mother's name was Agatha. So she was placed in foster care, and she was not the most traditionally beautiful of little girls, women. She was known for having a large nose, a crooked back, and twisted knees. And so they called her hag face. They said, you have a devil dad. And so I think by the time she was a teenager, she returned to the caves. She just wanted to go back to where she felt safe.
That's sad.
And she felt like nobody would bother her. And when she lived in these caves, which, by the way, you can go visit these caves. It's like a tourist destination. She studied herbs. She knew how to heal the sick. She came up with remedies, potions. She was able to predict the future. And she was known as a witch and a prophetess. She was a single and entrepreneurial woman, which at the time was kind of new, rare. And she did fall in love and marry a man whose last name was Shipton. That's where she got that. And then, of course, he died a few years later because that's what happens in the 1500s. So, again, she's a widow. She grew up in a cave. She was made fun of for her looks. But then people began to really respect her because she was sort of known as the female Nostradamus. And if we know about Nostradamus, we know that he was a seer who would say these almost like little poems and predict major events, and you kind of couldn't figure out what it meant until it already happened. Like Nostradamus had things to say about Napoleon and I think the Great Fire of London and a bunch of other things. So she would speak in rhymes. Now, I'm going to read one of the things that she said about the future. And I am going to give the disclaimer that some things that I read and watched said she absolutely said this. Some people claimed that some author sensationalized her afterwards to say these things. But either way, it's it's kind of remarkable. So this is allegedly what Mother Shipton said. Again, in the 1400s or early 1500s. Carriages without horses shall go, and accidents fill the world with woe. So that's like a car, a train.
Yeah.
Around the world, thoughts shall fly in the twinkling of an eye.
Ooh, I'm getting chills.
The world upside down shall be, and gold found at the root of a tree. Through hills man shall ride, and no horse be at his side. Underwater men shall walk, shall sleep, shall talk. In the air men shall be seen, in white, in black, in green. In water iron then shall float, as easy as a wooden boat. Gold shall be found and shown in a land that's not now known. Fire and water shall wonders do. England shall at last admit a foe. The world to an end shall come in 1881. So a lot of people were very concerned about the year 1881 because they thought, oh, old Mother Shipton predicted the world would end. So I guess on that day, a lot of people went outside of their houses and laid down in their fields and looked up and waited for something to happen. And of course it didn't.
And yeah, I was gonna say, is there some sort of shift or thing that an event that happened in 1881?
You know what?
Like
That's a good thing. We should look that up. I mean, was that, well, I'm just going to be making this up. Was that sort of like the start of
the Industrial Revolution or something? I'm gonna,
like, it's almost like the world as we know it will come to an end in 1881. I wonder. She was really revered. You know, it's like she went from being sort of made fun of to really loved. Messengers from the king would come to visit her. They really had faith and trust in her and her abilities. And some of the things that she has predicted were the Spanish Armada, the resurgence of the plague, wars and disputes, the death of Mary, Queen of Scots, and the death of Charles I. And there is a moth named after her because the moth sort of has a nose or something. So they named it Mother Shipton's moth.
I wonder if that's where, like, when I was little and I got a witch costume, it came with this like fake nose, and like witches and like drawings and stuff, you see them with this like it's like a witch thing.
So yeah, that is the story of old Mother Shipton. Just misunderstood, born in a cave, raised in a cave, returned to the cave, and then was like really, people really loved her and relied on her.
What a glow up story. I think it was common if babies were born with any like deformities or like something that they like looked physically different, that they it would be said like, oh, like a devil or a demon was like their father or something, which is very sad.
Which is so sad. It's like, no, it's the butcher, but he just doesn't want to say it because he's married.
Yeah.
It's not the devil.
Mother Shipton. Well, I'm glad it sounds like she ended up having a happy, peaceful life in the end.
I think she did.
Okay.
She lived a long time too. She died in 1560. So she lived like almost 80 years. Good for you, Ursula. Okay, I'm ready for my next bedtime story.
Okay, my next one. So I've talked a little bit about her before, and I have my book here that I used for some of my research, The Magic of Marie Laveau. So again, if you listen to my New Orleans adventures, talked about how I went on the Bad Bitches of New Orleans tour, learned about Marie Laveau, went to the Marie Laveau voodoo shop where they had like an altar there in her favor. I saw her home where she lived. A really interesting woman, and I know I've told you a little bit about her, but I have a little bit more to share. So this one I don't have my notes as organized. But I thought it was important to note. So let's see. She lived in the 1800s in New Orleans. So slavery still existed at this time. And Marie's great-grandmother Marguerite was brought to America as a child from Senegal by African slave traders. And so Marie's grandmother and mother were both born into and lived in slavery. However, later in life, her grandmother was able to buy herself out of slavery, and her mother was freed. So Marie was born as a free Black woman in 1800s New Orleans. However, slavery still existed at this time. So I thought this was interesting to note, one, to just sort of understand her background, but also she had a pretty remarkable way of sort of, I feel like she was like her own little portal, because she became a really well-respected, important, prominent, powerful woman in a time where, you know, Black people were still considered less than and were slaves, and she was still, and let alone being a woman as well. And she became this like incredibly well-respected person in society in New Orleans. So I thought that was pretty incredible. She also, she had a husband who disappeared and then entered a more or less marriage with a white man. So she was in an interracial, it wasn't a marriage because marriage was not legal at that time, but they had like 7 children together. And so that was sort of Marie Laveau's upbringing and the life she lived. So she was a devout Catholic, which I mentioned before, which I think is so interesting, to be a voodoo priestess, the queen of voodoo, and be a devout Catholic. But New Orleans voodoo is a combination of Catholicism, of voodoo from Africa, and as well as traditional Native American cultures from that area. So she worked as a hairdresser. And this was how she came to know the ins and outs of New Orleans society. So she kind of knew everyone's secrets. She knew everyone's stories. Everyone really trusted her. But she really knew kind of everyone and everything. But she didn't use it to really play... she didn't use it to manipulate or like play a power card, but it did give her this power because everyone sort of knew that she knew everything.
Oh, okay.
They knew that about her. So she would host weekly group ceremonies that practiced like voodoo rituals, and she had both Black and white people coming to those ceremonies, which I also thought was cool. Like I said, like she really, like at a time where things were still very separated, she brought people together. And she would also see individual clients for anything from winning lawsuits to attracting lovers. So similar themes of like attracting love, winning fortunes, winning favor. And she was also committed to acts of service in her community. So some magical practitioners that we learn from history can sort of be manipulative, sort of like fake their powers, sort of... they're playing for power, but she was really, really dedicated to like serving her community, uplifting her community, and that's why she was so respected and loved. So she wasn't remembered for theatrics. She was remembered for like genuinely healing people and helping people and serving people. So she would do things such as nurse yellow fever patients, post bail for women of color, and pray with condemned prisoners. And it was really interesting. She was kind of most famous for, well, maybe not most famous, but she never lost a lawsuit that she took on. So let's see. Where is these notes? Okay, Marie has had a knack for winning court cases. She would, of course, get all of the facts to know that she was supporting a noble cause. So she didn't want to, you know, someone to come to her and say, I need to be free if he was guilty. She wasn't going to take a case on like that. But she would get the facts. She would know what she was supporting. And if she accepted the case, she never lost one. And there was a little bit of description of what she would do, but she would make these gris-gris bags, which were basically charm bags. So like think of like, I don't know, we like make spell jars. This is a specific kind made for a specific purpose, but she would like place them around the courtroom, and it was pretty much as simple as that. A lot of the voodoo is like making something and then saying a prayer. So she would probably also like bless each spot she was putting them. I'm kind of filling in blanks there. But it is said that she won every single case she took, which I thought was pretty incredible. And so she was also incredibly famous for her healing abilities. New Orleans at this time was incredibly unsanitary. It was a wild, more or less lawless city. When I took the tour, I couldn't believe the stories I was hearing, but it also just didn't have like infrastructure in place. Like the city's what am I trying to say? Like toilets would run into the Mississippi, and that's also where they pull drinking water from.
Oh.
So you can imagine it was overrun by like yellow fever and cholera and all sorts of things all of the time. There was a time in Marie Laveau's life that yellow fever was so rampant in New Orleans that they couldn't dig graves fast enough, and there was just bodies in the street, and there was like this like joke that people had to start digging their own graves. So it was really an extraordinary time to be alive, but she was known for her healing abilities. So one, incredibly, she was always there with the sick, and she herself was always fine, but she would use energy giving methods rather than energy taking methods. So this was the time in history when doctors would do things like bloodletting and give you mercury, just things that weren't correct. And she really amazed the doctors of her time. But what she was using was natural, like folk healing methods. So again, it was a healing collaboration between African, Native American, and local Cajun, they said treaters, quote, treaters. So most of these healing remedies were a combination of an herbal concoction that she would create and a healing prayer. But she was a healer. She knew everyone's stories and was trusted with them. She knew what to give when, what ritual to work for whatever situation you were in. But she very much was about like for your highest good, or like what's for the noble cause, which I think is so incredible. And I think I mentioned this last time, but just sort of wrap it up. So I didn't write down what year she died. However, when she passed, she has a tomb that you can still go visit in New Orleans. I didn't get the chance to. And people actually to this day go there and leave offerings to win her favor, to hopefully like get her to like help them with whatever they need help with. But there was this sort of sensational story that she was a woman who lived for 150 years, because after she passed and was buried, people would see her walking the streets, and they would walk up to her and say, "Are you Marie Laveau?" And this woman would say, "Yes, I am." It was her daughter who looked exactly like her and who was also named Marie. So she wasn't lying. She was Marie Laveau, and she, I think, sort of carried on in her mother's footsteps. I didn't do a lot of research on her, but she's famous for being like not even a ghost, like she was alive for 150 years, which is, however, not true. But that is the short story of Marie Laveau, and I think she's just the most interesting woman I've come across. I haven't had the chance to read this whole book yet, so this is sort of a choppy when I skimmed through it. But if anyone's interested, it's called The Magic of Marie Laveau. I bought it when I was in New Orleans, and it's really, really interesting. And it also has some of her, well, I don't know if they're specifically her, but traditional New Orleans voodoo spell work and like things they would use for specific things. And I will not be doing any of these spells, but it's really fun to read them and learn about them. Just some of the things they ask for, like one of them was like grave dirt from an evil person, and and different things. Yeah, just really interesting. What's this one? One large beef tongue. Oh, this is the one. 1 pound, a full pound of grave dirt from the grave of an evil person. What's this for? When the goal is to silence someone who is gossiping or sullying your good name.
Oh.
Or when you need to silence an opposing witness in court, among other things.
Who wrote this? Like, is it
Denise Alvarado. Author of the Voodoo Doll spell book.
Oh, so she's a voodoo priestess.
I don't know if she calls herself a priestess, but she has dedicated her life. So she was born and raised in the Creole culture of New Orleans. She's a teacher at a university, and she's spent a lot of her life studying New Orleans voodoo culture and things. So yeah, Marie Laveau. I have a little that's actually a prayer card, but with her image on it that I keep on my desk now.
Oh, I've seen that.
Because I don't know, I find her really inspiring, and
she was so beautiful.
Yeah, she was known for her beauty. And yeah, I think she's just a really interesting, wonderful, powerful woman in history. And it's interesting because when I was at her house when I was in New Orleans, my ears were ringing off the hook. And then when I was writing all this stuff out and I was kind of deciding what to include and what not to, I'd get like little shivers. And I didn't get shivers doing any of the other ones that I was researching. So I was like, I feel like she's like, yeah, you can write that. Yeah, put that in.
Voodoo is an interesting one because it's so fascinating, and yet, from what I understand, it is definitely like a closed practice. So it's you know, you want to learn more about it, and you also want to respect it. So there's like that fine line to walk. And when I was learning about one of the people I did, which would be my third person, was also a voodoo priestess in Louisiana. And I learned that so I didn't know this. So to call somebody a slave is not the way to say it, because it defines them, like that's like who they are. So I think the correct way is an enslaved person, like, they were an enslaved person. So I was like, I just wanted to know how to say that in the most respectful way, because the fact that it ever happened is just horrendous.
Yes.
So these are just things that I'm learning and sharing. I love Marie Laveau, though.
I know, she's so cool. I can't wait to read more of the book.
I have to find the song I wrote about her that I turned in for homework, 8 years ago or so, 9-10 years ago.
And we'll sing it on the show.
It was so funny because I just never shared with people that I went to school with, really, that I did music. I just always compartmentalized my life in a way that maybe was over the top. But some classmate came up to me and she was like, you should really, go to an open mic or something. And I said, oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was funny. Okay. So let's chat about Agnes Sampson. She shows up on every list, and yet, no matter how much research I did, I could only gather so much about her.
But I also saw her on lists, and there wasn't much information.
No, but there's like a takeaway that there's a reason I picked her. So she was around in the 1500s in Scotland. She was known as the wife of Keith or the witch of Keith. She was a midwife, a healer, and an herbalist. And she was very, very helpful at a time when, 1500 Scotland, when medicine just wasn't. Okay.
Wasn't.
And there was, she would use eggs and vinegar. She had all sorts of spells and things that she would do. So the reason why she got popular, while quite honestly she was truly minding her own business, is King James somehow knew about her. And he had married his wife, who was, of course, 14 years old. Naturally. Why wouldn't she be? And he gets on a ship to go get to her. And the storm at sea is crazy.
I remember this.
Just storm upon storm upon storm. Then he collects his child bride.
Yikes.
Ugh. And then on the float back, on the voyage back, the storms are just over the top. So he decides that it must be because a witch cast a spell on the weather. And so in the 1590s, he just became very obsessed with witches. And I was thinking, like, what's that thing? Like, why are you so obsessed with me? Like, that's sort of the vibe that I got from this. So he accused Agnes Sampson, who was, again, a midwife, a healer, an herbalist, like a truly good, lovely person who had daughters and helped women in the community, helped heal people. He accused her of conjuring up these storms. And she said, no, I did not. And he said, oh, I think you did. And this was so awful. So this is a little trigger warning if you want to skip ahead like 30 seconds. So she was tortured. And I saw pictures of the devices that they used. I mean, it was just like contraptions around the head and things around the neck that would just get tighter until finally she would admit, quote unquote, that she did it. But truly, it was never a true confession because it was just like anything to stop this madness. So she admitted to conjuring the storms, which of course she didn't do any of that. That's called weather. And she was also known for giving predictions. Her whole body, head to toe, was shaved, like every piece of hair on her body, which is so like, just awful, because they wanted to reveal a witch's mark.
Oh, I've heard of the witch's mark. Or a
devil mark. And so I thought, wow, what must this have looked like? And I'm picturing like a very specific, it's any freckle.
Yep.
Any freckle, any mole, any beauty mark, any scar. I mean, they would have a field day with me, I'll tell you what. No, there is no, if this is a freckle for every time I was a witch in a past life, okay? I thought, I saw this and I thought, oh, I would have been screwed. Like they wouldn't have had to shave anything. They would just know.
There it is.
So she was part of the North Berwick witch trials. So witch trials were everywhere. They made her admit, because of her birthmark, mole, or scar, that she had made a deal with the devil. And eventually, after I see that's all I really got about her, but I have a point. Eventually, after she confessed to these things she never really did, they, killed her.
Yeah. Like
the next day, after they just tortured and shaved, and it was all these things. And I couldn't let this one go. I thought about this woman who had daughters, who knew what she was capable of, who knew she could help. And this woman's story made me feel like it was so important that we say the word witch and reclaim the word witch as often as possible and in the most special way, because I always knew witches were like a Halloween costume and all these things, or like a character in a fictional movie or TV show. But I think we forget sometimes that this is a word that we called women, that powerful men called women to remove their power from them and to kill them. And the only way that you could survive, I mean, unless one of the zillions of illnesses got you first, as a woman in these times, and even today in many places, is to stay really quiet and to stay really hidden and to not show what you can do. And it's just this fascinating thing to hear that they're like, oh, well, you're a healer and you can lean into like the future and you're an herbalist and you help people have children. Like, you must be making a deal with the devil and you must be a witch.
Right.
So I don't know why. I just thought, like, I have to honor this woman who had her whole life, her power, everything, her dignity sort of stripped away from her for doing these wonderful things.
So many women, too.
Thousands. And it was, I just think a tactic to tell women to shut up and stay in your lane.
I found it interesting because I told Juliet I had the intention of like, okay, I want sort of like one villainous witch, and then I want to find two, which I wanted to do Marie Laveau, and then I wanted to find like one other one about that was like really like uplifting and inspiring and positive. And you know what? That was hard to find because most of the stories ended with that.
Yeah.
And were written by people that didn't really understand. Most of the women who were executed as witches were not even practicing witches. They looked at someone funny, or a neighbor was jealous that she was beautiful and she might take her husband, and accused her, like, just bullshit. But it was to this day, I was amazed that I was like, why aren't there pages and pages of inspiring stories of witches that have the details of the good they did? Because with stories like that, there was barely any details of the good that she did, even though she did good.
How she died.
It was just the sensational, of like being tortured and killed with the name witch. And it bummed me out to do this research a little bit, because I was like, damn, do we need to become freaking historians and start pulling the details of these amazing healers and tell more of their story? Because maybe. I'm sure if we went to the library and we had more time, we could have found it. But I'm like, a quick Google search should be sufficient to find. I was like typing like inspirational witches of history, positive stories of witches of history, and it was just the same 5 names, and it was just like
a paragraph.
They were accused and then they were burned, and that was it.
Right, like what did they do while they were thriving and alive and and empowering themselves and others?
And like on most of those lists, Marie Laveau didn't even pop up. And I know she's not really under the name witch, so that might be why. But you know, she's definitely in the magical realm, which is why I chose her. But I was just like, why is this so hard to search?
So many of the searches that came up for me were like, I said like, famous witches in history or whatever. And it was like the Wicked Witch of the West. I mean, it was movies, fictional. It was just fascinating.
I know. I was like, were there really not that many real life witches in history? Are we starting something new here? I thought there was tons of them.
I know. I guess we are. It just made me feel like with the Women's Month and all these things sort of mixing at the same moment, I just felt like it is so important to tell people it casually, like, oh yeah, like I'm a witch. It's not what you think.
I know, because
it was never what you thought.
To this day, people are like, oh, they get scared.
Yes.
Like, what do you think
I have
I'm
no
doing?
Connection with the devil.
No.
I work in the light. We work with
and all power to you.
God, angels,
that's for
universe.
You, but it's not for us.
You know, we love to manifest. We love to do spells. We love to do magic. We love to step into our power. I mean, I think it's a form of witchcraft to really love yourself and be confident. That's a spell you cast over your life. That's something we've sort of been discouraged from doing throughout all of human history.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, I think at the end of the day, what it means to be a witch is to claim your power as a woman. And it's not even just men that don't like that. A lot of women don't like that either. It makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. You know, it's deeply rooted in religions and all sorts of things. But man, this trying to do some lighthearted researching really opened my eyes to like, oh, most of the articles were like, the vast majority of them were like, she was said to have made a deal with the devil. She was said to do this with the devil. And I'm like,
well, what did she do?
Do what? And why are so many people working with the devil? I don't understand. What's he doing for everybody? I don't get it. It's not for me. No offense, guy. But and I also kind of think that, I don't want to get into this, but I also kind of think the devil is misunderstood too. I'm not ever going to work with him. I don't want to, but I just think, I don't know, everything's all jumbled up. But this was very eye-opening.
Yeah,
doing this research.
It just made me want to like scream it from rooftops.
Yeah,
which was, you know, a big growing moment for young Juliet.
Okay,
all right, I'm ready for my final story.
So I picked one more modern witch, so to speak. Her name was Sybil Leek. She lived 1917 to 1982, and she was known as Britain's most famous witch.
Ooh.
And I thought, wow, Sybil Leek, that is the most British name I've ever heard.
And witchy.
And witchy, yeah. So some of her titles: witch, astrologer, occult author, and self-proclaimed psychic. It was everything I read was like very specific to say self-proclaimed psychic. I'm like, just call her a psychic, guys.
Yeah,
it's
just
fine.
let her have it.
I didn't really find any specific stories or testimonies to her psychic abilities, but it's not necessarily the most interesting thing about her. So one notable thing is that she claims to be a descendant of Molly Lee, who lived in like the late 1600s to early 1700s.
I saw that name.
Okay, so yeah, so she was accused of being a witch. And I thought I wrote more notes about Molly, but I didn't. And I forgot. But Molly Lee, so I think she was just sort of one of the names in one of the many aforementioned witch hunt trial things. One of the famous ones in Britain. Molly Lee, sadly, was accused of being a witch in one of those. What's interesting is that Molly Lee, in the ancestor, was known to have a jackdaw on her shoulder, which is a big blackbird.
A jackdaw?
It's called a jackdaw.
Like,
but it's a big blackbird.
I'm having a Pop Warner moment.
I had never heard this either. I was like, what's a jackdaw? But there was a picture and it said, in parentheses, a big blackbird.
Okay.
It's like a giant blackbird.
Okay.
It's called a jackdaw. I don't know. Maybe there's Britain crows or something.
Got it. We're learning.
British crows. I don't know. So that was one of the things that made Molly sort of stick out, like Molly Lee. Now I'm kind of remembering she was just sort of a character. She had this big blackbird always on her shoulder. And I think she was like a healer and things like that. So they were like, witch, which I'm like, fair enough. You had a big blackbird on your shoulder. Molly, keep it cool, you know. People are going a little crazy right now. So anyway, so Sybil, like her ancestor Molly of 800 years before, Sybil also had a blackbird that she had on her shoulder.
It was the same bird.
It was the same bird.
It never died.
It's the familiar that kept living forever and ever. So let me go back to that. So it is said that Sybil's immediate family encouraged and taught her much of her practice. So she kind of grew up in a witch family. They're proud, and there's not actually like confirmation that Molly Lee is definitely her ancestor, but they were proud of this 800-year ago ancestor that they had. And so her father was really interested in Eastern philosophies and the power of herbs and taught her about that. And her grandmother taught her astrology. And one anecdote that I thought was kind of cute was like they would make baked goods together, her and her grandmother, and then they would put like astrological signs on the baked goods.
That's cute.
It's like, oh, we should do that little bake sale.
Gemini cupcake.
So when she was in her late teens, when Sybil was in her late teens, her grandmother sent her to a French coven to replace a distant relative, as high priestess. So in her late teens, I think she was like 16 or 17 at this time, she was sent off to a coven, and not only sent to be in this coven, but sent to be the high priestess.
Wow.
Yeah. And then she would later also spend time learning and living with the Romani gypsies, learning more of their like folklore and magical practices. She lived in the forest with them. And then she also spent time in another coven after that. So she was like, from a young age, she was really wrapped up in like her life was about being a witch. She was living in covens. She learned from the Romani gypsies. So when she was 20, so she's still so young and she's done all of this. She's lived in multiple covens and things. So when she was 20, she like moved back to her hometown, which I didn't write down for some reason. And she opened 3 antique shops, and she did not sell anything to do with witchcraft. She was like, it was like to the dismay and disappointment of people. I was trying to find like how she came to be known, because by this time she was sort of being known. People were interested, like media outlets wanted to talk to her. People were getting interested. People knew that she was a witch. She was open about it, and I don't really know how the media attention sort of got kicked off and began. Maybe the covens were on the news or something, who knows, but she started gaining attention. So the village was like overrun with tourists and reporters. It was like this small town, and they were all disappointed that she wasn't running like witch shops. She was running antique shops. And her landlord eventually asked her to move out, because it was a small town, and he was like, the village is sick of this. We don't want your fans and reporters coming around here anymore. We're kicking you out. So she lost her antique stores. But around this time, she was asked to come to New York to speak about a book that, funnily enough, was not about witchcraft. It was about antiques. So Sybil loved her antiques. And so she came to New York to talk about that book. And then she ended up staying in the U.S. So she lived the rest of her life here in the U.S. So after moving to New York, she began to work with Hans Hover. I can't read my writing. Hans Hoher? Something. Who was a parapsychologist and investigated psychic phenomena. And so she worked with him for a while. They did multiple TV and radio programs together. And so they were studying like if being a psychic was real or not. So then after her time in New York doing that, she moved to LA for a while, and she worked with Dr. Israel Regardier, who was an authority on Kabbalah and ritual magic. And they practiced the Golden Dawn rituals together, which Kabbalah has Jewish mystical roots, I believe, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was trying to understand what the Golden Dawn rituals were. What does that mean? It's a little bit secretive. Okay. There's not a lot of information about it, but it connects back to specifics within Kabbalah, and it's about spiritual advancement. So it's like this ladder, like you do a ritual and now you're here. It kind of made me think of Scientology. I was just gonna say, of like, but Scientology's like, pay me this money and you do this. This is more of a like, do this ritual, you advance. Do this ritual, you advance. But it's about spiritual advancement and like going up these levels. So she spent time there, and then she ended up passing away in Florida. There wasn't much after that with information about her, but she wrote a lot of books. She did those TV and radio programs. She was very, very active and outspoken, and there was some controversy around her. She often disagreed with other witches. She disapproved of nudity and drugs in rituals. So, you know, people use things like ayahuasca to like open up to like spiritual things or whatever she was coming across. She disapproved of that. She disapproved of nudity. But I thought this was kind of funny because those two things, I'm like, yeah, that's cool. But this, I'm like, no. And she did believe in cursing. And I'm like, no, I believe you can. I don't believe in doing it. I'm never going to curse somebody. Oh. You know, but she believed in that. She was like, yeah, go on and curse whoever. I was like, all right. Sybil making choices. And one of her students said that she was said to, quote, mix truths with untruths liberally, causing great harm. So I think that just sort of means that she was very opinionated, and when she was as a teacher, she would sort of mix in her opinions with sort of the more factual or generally like respected rules of magic or whatever she was teaching. And you know, Sybil was only human. Maybe her opinions weren't always right. So she was said to maybe not be a great teacher in that respect. But that is Sybil, a more modern famous witch who is still, as far as I could tell, though she had some disagreements in the witchcraft community, more or less respected. And I learned about Sybil from Wikipedia and the National Paranormal Society. I love it. Those are that's my third witch, Sybil Leek.
Amazing. My sources are, I went to YouTube and typed in the names of these people, and whatever video was under 10 minutes. Yeah. That's my source. And I read a couple things too, but okay. So this woman I loved. Okay. This is another powerful Black woman, a voodoo priestess, voodoo queen, Julia Brown. I had never heard of Julia Brown.
I haven't heard of her before either.
So she lived in a small town in Louisiana, and I don't know if I have a year on this. 1860s, she was an adult. 1880s, she got married. Okay, so late 1800s. She was known for her charms and her curses, and she was well known for her creepy songs.
Ooh, creepy songs. Interesting.
She would sing and play these creepy songs on guitar on her front porch, and people would walk by and hear them.
What does creepy mean? Like the lyrics were creepy or they were like sounded weird?
So she apparently wrote a lot of like beautiful, lovely little songs, but towards the end of her life, there was one in particular that was really spooky, and I'll tell you all about it. She would perform rituals, and she lived in the town of Frenier. And Frenier is, I think, northwest of New Orleans. It's like a little small town, and it's the kind of town where a railroad runs through it, but there's like no electricity. I have so much I wrote down. I really liked her story. Okay. So she used her methods to heal people. She prayed for people. She had medical remedies. She would lay hands on people. And because there was a lack of doctors in these rural areas, she was there to help, and she did help people a lot, and she provided her services for free. And basically, for most of her life, she was happy to do it. But then people began to take advantage. They would only want to spend time with her if they needed something. They just sort of began to, in her opinion, use her. So she started to get a little annoyed. So she was also a midwife, a healer, herbs, natural remedies. So there were no roads, no electricity, or no doctors. The railroad brought supplies and took mail, and that was it. The houses were all built 8 feet off the ground because they were sort of in like swampland.
Oh, right.
And rain and stuff. So these houses were built on like big stilts and stuff. In 1880, she married Mr. Celestine Brown. She was heavily relied on, but they only turned to her in times of need. They called her Aunt Julia Brown, and she lived at the edge of a swamp. After her husband died, she inherited 40 acres of the land that he had. And so this is what the troublesome lyrics were. I like that she was a spooky songwriter. I felt like I could relate.
A spooky songwriter that lives at the edge of a swamp. Very witchy vibes.
Right? And people loved her. And so as she got older, this was her song. She would sing this little song that said, "When I die, I'm taking the whole town with me. When I die, I'm taking the whole town."
Oh, I gotta chill.
Okay.
Is everyone like, what the fuck does that mean?
So people, imagine you're walking home and, "Hi, Juliet. Hi, Marge. When I die, I'm taking the whole town with me." And you're like, "Okay, Juliet, talk to you later." So people were like, is it a curse? Is she predicting something? Like, what is going on? Well, when she was 70 years old, she died. And this was in 1915. The entire town attended her funeral. Some people, she was very well liked, but some people just showed up out of fear and out of guilt because they felt like they had taken advantage of her. And the song scared them because it was common knowledge that, you know, she'd been singing this spooky song on her porch. Well, as they are lowering her casket into the earth, a violent storm begins.
Oh my God.
A Category 4 hurricane with 125 mile per hour winds, 13 feet of rain. A storm that...
13 feet of rain?
A storm that from their perspective came out of nowhere. Okay. Virtually every building and house was destroyed. The town was gone. The town was gone. Now,
that's incredibly sad for that town, but I'm like full of goosebumps. It hurts. I'm so goosebumpy right now.
Okay. So 60 people died in the town, and they tried to rebuild the town at different times, but no matter what, a storm would come and wipe the whole town away. So now the only thing that remains in the town of Frenier is the cemetery where the people who died are buried and where she is buried. That's it. They stopped rebuilding. So people felt like she had cursed the land because the people took advantage of her, and or she was more giving like a warning, a prediction, like better watch out, like when I die, this, I'm taking the whole town with me. So people are still debating, like, was it a curse? Like, she was well liked. Was it a warning? Was it a prediction? But basically what happened is other towns, New Orleans, other places that had, things like electricity and a newspaper, they knew a storm was coming. But because Frenier had the railroad that would come, whenever it came, they just never got word of it.
Right.
But isn't that unbelievable that she sang this spooky song about when I die, I'm taking the whole town with me when I die.
They lower her casket.
They had to literally drop it where it was and run for cover because it came in that fast, according to the stories. But she was amazing. A midwife, a healer, an herbalist. She was, and dare I say, a musician.
A spooky songwriter.
A musician. So that is the story of voodoo priestess / queen Julia Brown.
Wow, go Julia, taking the whole town with her.
I know, I saved that one for last because it was my favorite. Oh, and I wrote down, I have to credit Irene. She said, I think you should do this. It'll be funny. A bonus witch.
Oh.
Now, this is a story. We all maybe have heard of her, and you might think that I'm related to her because we share a last name. This is a woman who came from a family of witches. Her grandmother was a really well-known witch. Her mother did not want her to be a witch, though. And as she was about to turn 13, the grandma came and told her a story before she went to bed. And then grandma left. But then this witch and her brother and sister got onto the magical bus into Halloween Town.
Oh. I was like, their last name is Piper?
I looked it up. Her name's Marnie Piper.
I was listening to all of that. Like nothing else came in because I was just focusing on who's got the same last name.
And Grandma Aggie was played by Debbie Reynolds. And they fought Calabar. And that's my bonus witch.
Bonus witch. We should do another episode sometime of like our favorite witches, fictional witches and their stories.
And you'll hear me talk about Marnie Piper again.
I want to ask her to be on the podcast, that actress.
Oh, that would be so
I've DM'd
fun.
her before. Didn't get it.
We'll try it again this year.
Yeah. I was trying to get her for last Halloween, but alas, maybe we should start now. DMing her every day.
Hi.
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 Hey, everybody start commenting on her photos.
Yes.
You should be a guest on Goddess Hangs in October.
Specifically.
Because it would be fun to have a bunch of witches in October.
It would be. Well, what a time we've had.
This was so fun. I always love when we do little research episodes. It is fun. Like when we did the CIA one, and I think we did one other one.
Oh, we did like children who remember their past lives.
Yeah, that was fun.
Let us know in the comments. Do you like when we do our studying and research and share what we've learned?
Yeah, and if you have a suggestion for something you'd like us to do a little research episode on, let us know. We love to do it.
Let us know.
Let's see. Ad break.
Ad break.
Have you seen the hottest oracle deck on the block? Intuitive Magic Oracle.
Intuitive Magic Oracle was designed by Sadie and Juliet via Canva.
Designed with you in mind.
Because now we legally have to say that.
We've been doing our research.
We have an attorney finally.
Intuitive Magic Oracle. Via Canva. Juliet, want to pick a card?
I would love to pick a card.
Okay, I'm going to shuffle it and then I'm going to fan it out and then you pick one.
Yes, please. I need a message.
What do we all
for
need
the
to
ages.
know? What do the witches need to know?
This one. I think we did this one last time. Inner Child? Didn't we do that one last time?
I think we did. Let's pick another one, too.
Not that one.
But hey, didn't we all at some point when we were little want to be a witch?
Here we go. abundance. An abundance of resources, opportunities, and money is on its way to you right now. This and many other cards are available exclusively in the Goddess Hangs Intuitive Magic Oracle deck.
There's us on the box.
We're on the
cute.
box. We look so cute in that picture. There are over 60 cards. This is a deluxe deck with the font that is pretty big to read.
The font that just don't quit.
Intuitive Magic Oracle deck. You're going to love it. All sales are final. This is not Amazon.
Link in the show notes to get yours today.
Yay!
As always, we want to invite you into our amazing, incredible, magical, supportive
BFF Patreon.
This is the community for magic in your life, for friendship, for just unconditional love and support. It's pretty incredible. The second you arrive, the second you enter our portal, like, you are loved unconditionally.
The confetti flies. The champagne pops.
The aggro peach shakes.
Yes.
Discord members will get that one. That one's for you. Shout out. We would love to invite more of you. We also have a coven tier that includes a once a month coven meeting, which is a workshop. We've done a pendulum workshop. We've done a sex magic workshop. And this month we are doing an intuition workshop. So we're going to be talking about the clairs, how to tap into your intuition, doing a little intuition opening third eye meditation and spell. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Going to strengthen up those psychic powers that we know you have.
Everyone has them. And we would love to see you there. The Discord is so fun. It's so organized. We're just in there all day, every day, having a blast. And we'd love to see you there.
It is a next level community. Sadie and I are active in it, I would say, almost every single day.
Yeah, unless she's traveling, I'm in there. Yeah.
And the girls are planning meetups. There was an East Coast meetup where 8 or 9 goddesses got together and went to lunch and went shopping. And you can just make the absolute most of this amazing community. It's a way to really make some fabulous like-minded friends and to be able to talk about everything from your pets and your outfits to your spells, your astrology stuff, your shadow work.
Relationships, spicy chat.
Ooh, spicy.
Deity work, all sorts of stuff. It's all there. And it's waiting for you, goddess.
Oh, it's calling your name.
Calling
where
your name.
Everybody knows your name.
The goddess hangs discord. Nailed it. We'll get that next time.
We also have a fabulous jewelry line with Outcharmed Jewelry. Get the matching BFF friendship bracelet. It is the most lightweight, sparkly, beautiful, gorgeous bracelet. We have a magic charm ring, and we have our signature witch and goddess necklaces.
They're so cute. They're beautiful quality. I wear my witch necklace almost every single day, at least every day that I dress up and do something, which is more like 2 to 3 times a week.
I'm always wearing my goddess necklace. It makes me feel so confident and so pretty and so powerful, and I love it. What else? We have hats, bucket hats, dad hats. We have
stickers.
Oh, yeah. We said we'd have them up last week, but somebody printed them incorrectly.
We're looking at you printing.
You printed it wrong. So we had to reorder them. So they're available.
Probably available now.
Check our website, and if it's there, grab it. And if not, check back a few days later.
You also have just a couple more days to join the Activate Your Magic waitlist, my 9-week high-level program. It's a ultimate manifestation program. I interviewed one of my grads this past week, and she said if I could describe this program in one word, it would be clarity. Getting clear on what you want and clear on how to get there. I have so many incredible stories I'm sharing in the next week, so make sure you're on my Instagram and catching either the lives or the replays of the IG lives as I interview more of the babes that were in the last round of Activate Your Magic. And when you're on the wait list, which the link is in the show notes, you save a few bucks when you enroll and you get a little sneak peek of the program and what to expect. So hop on there, DM me or email me if you have any questions about it. I'm so excited to see who shows up for this round, who enrolls, and who I get to know so well and work with. And make sure you're following us on Instagram at Goddess Hangs. I am Sadie Olson.
I'm at Juliet.Piper.
Anything else?
I have meditations coming out on the 18th.
Ooh.
The Creatrix Meditation Bundle.
Very exciting.
It's, I think it's 5. Yes, it's 5. And the themes are extraordinary expression, ocean of abundance. It's a really beautiful, curated collection of guided meditations, especially for artistic and creative souls, to help support you on your journey of bringing your work forward. I have a wait list as well where you get a nice little coupon if you sign up. So we'll add that into the show notes.
All right, make sure you're on those wait lists, and we will see you next week. Bye.